Alright, finally figured out a way to do this with 0 ingots, which I didn't expect to really do in Lufenia Plus, but I guess it helps to have Sid Reigns as a synergy unit. And have to start with Runaga Storm, hope that's how you pronounce that, because Sid Reigns has 0 ingots and does not start with his first buff. We're going to use Bitter End because we're not going to no boss turn this. The team doesn't actually do enough damage with 0 ingots to take this out without giving the boss any turns. And so in order to do that, we have to do a couple of things right here. One of the really annoying things about the boss's recast there is it applies those 2-frame debuffs for many turns, which can get in the way of our buffs, especially with Aphmau on the team, doing a lot of buffing. But luckily, Sid Reigns' EX removes all the debuffs, and so that's what we plan on doing. We're going to drop Kurasame's debuff, and we're just going to leave it there. The Sage Fire buff won't apply to Ignis because he already has too many buffs and debuffs, but the Sage Fire debuff will still apply to the enemy. And that's what I was looking to do there, because that should add a little bit of HP damage. And let's go ahead and get Keiss's debuff on there for the Bravery Fund. Might as well make Aphmau launchable, but I guess we're not going to do that yet. Not launchable, but able to perform a launch. And so what I'm basically going to do here is I'm going to do the standard Aphmau Reigns strategy combination, which I can't do until I get rid of these debuffs anyways. But I plan on doing that and swapping out Ignis for the BT plus Y'shtola with blue armor. That will allow us to do a lot of damage. So let's see, the boss has had another turn. I'm waiting to swap out Ignis until the Kurasame's debuff hits 5 stacks, I guess you'd call it. And so right now I'm just kind of doing stuff. I also have to wait for Sid Reigns' EX to become available before I can go into the Aphmau Reigns combo. Unfortunately, this boss is so slow until he loses more HP, or it loses more HP, that I kind of just have to do stuff until it can get to 4 stacks of Kurasame's debuff. But I'm not complaining too much, because how can I complain with a team like this? Alright, so Aphmau's EX is adding her buffs to our allies, and because that only happens when she uses her EX, and we've already gotten her to apply her own buffs, so might as well 6th element for the high turn rate, and I think he already had his speed down. But I'm a little worried about Reigns breaking here, which is just going to delay the guy even more, but what can you do? Runaga Storm. Oh, he didn't launch? That's funny. I think Reigns is EX, or not EX, his LD buff wore off, and so he loses launch on every turn, guaranteed launch. Anyways, not something you'll see too often unless you're running silly runs like this. And now we have Y'shtola, so we're going to go into the burst, because I'm not worried about her running. We're going to immediately go into the burst, because I'm not worried about her running out of burst turns before she runs out of friend turns. I can never tell how much damage that thing does, I just hope it was good. And this is a pause right here. So now that we're done with the pause, we're going to make Y'shtola able to do the launch, but not yet. There we go. My plan with Y'shtola is to use Stone Plus to delay the boss while he's still delayable. Which is only up until the boss goes down to 49% HP. Then you can no longer delay him. And now, that's 1,000,000 damage right there in that launch. Now we're hitting hard with Y'shtola's burst effect out. Aphmau, I pulled an Aphmau before Y'shtola because I wanted to get Aphmau's buffs from her EX onto Y'shtola. And now with Y'shtola, we're just gonna do a bunch of delays well, not a bunch, but at least 4 or 5 of them or whatever. I have to make sure I don't run Y'shtola out of her turns because Stone Plus is high turn rate skill. We're going to pull an Aphmau for the cavalry rush. So much damage. And yeah, that's Y'shtola with her blue armor and her burst effect allowing everyone to fly so high above the cap. I'm not going into the Aphmau Rains combo just yet. I want to use Stone one more time, and that's giving Y'shtola 2 turns in a row, so I need to make sure she doesn't jump in front of Rains. And now, oh yeah, I use the HP plus because you don't want to use that on one of Rains' free turns because of a lot of reasons. But Aphmau is actually coming right after Rains anyways, so I don't really need to worry about the turn manipulation here. Yep, I can just go straight into Seraphic Ray. I'm assuming it's pronounced. Yeah, Rains' EXs are going to hit really hard. And one of the reasons... I'll come back to that in a second. Alright, so we're going to do Aphmau's Free Brave and HP attack, just to get a little bit of that HP damage, and now we're going to go into Aphmau Rains. We'll add Tactoral Switch, or whatever it's called. Tactic Switch. To Rains. Rains will pull Aphmau back, because Aphmau is now going to get 2 free turns with her little puppet overhead buff. And that will allow Aphmau to get a couple of turns in a row and allow Sid Rains to get some free turns. So there's one. Rains can do whatever he wants here. I guess we're going to refresh his Cavalry Commander buff. You typically don't want to use that skill if you don't have to because it doesn't battery, unlike Rains' other skills. There's another free turn for Aphmau. Rains again doesn't have to worry about pulling Aphmau in, so we can Seraphic Ray. It's like Terrific, except it's Seraphic. A lot of HP plus there, or extra HP damage. And after this, Aphmau will not get a turn right after Rains. Rains has one more use of Tactic Switch, so we need to pull Aphmau back up. And that's what we're doing here. Getting lots of damage because of the team and the synergy for Rains. And Aphmau will need to use Tactics whatever. Yeah, see Rains, the buff wore off there. And so with her using it, that will give Rains the turn right afterwards. And then Aphmau's LD does not give her a free turn or anything like that, so Rains will have to pull Aphmau back up. Yeah, see now he has... Oh, he's running out of other buffs. Gotta make sure he doesn't run out of the I2 will challenge my fate buff. On that note, Rains is actually a pretty interesting character. I think Final Fantasy XIII is a little underrated with its story. I think everybody focuses on the battling methods or the dialogue or the graphics, and people kind of lose out on the story of Final Fantasy XIII, which is pretty unique. If you look, I'm assuming you've played through it by now if you're watching this, but if you look at its antagonist, Bartandalus, he's actually one of the most, what would you call it, insidious protagonists out there, because Final Fantasy, for the most part, was like evil empire versus, I think H.C. Bailey used to say in Final Fantasy, empires are evil and kingdoms are good. But most of Final Fantasy, for a long time, was evil empire trying to take over the world, and then the good guys come and save it. But Bartandalus changed things, and yeah, it wasn't exactly like that in Final Fantasy X or some of the other ones, but it was a lot less obvious through a lot of 13 who the real antagonist was. And then even then, like, he wasn't just like, let me take over the world and rule it and be evil or anything. He was like, I have an objective, and that objective is to pull the creator of existence back into reality for whatever reason, but it was interesting because it was unique. And he was almost, I think I heard someone put it once, that Bartandalus was so successful at being subtle with his plans that the player misses it. Unless you play through multiple times, I guess, or figure it out, or go on YouTube, or read a lot of the lore, which, anyways, where was I? Let's see, 4 turns of tactical switch still, but we need to make sure Aphmau is going before Y'shtola. And, yeah, what's interesting about these two is, you know, it's one thing to give a boss no turns, but to give a third character no turns, that's pretty special, pretty unique. And you can see now that the enemy, you can't even see their turns anymore. We have a pretty safe amount of breathing room. And this is why, instead of no turning the boss, I ended up giving the boss a few turns so that we had a little bit of time to make some space and get some breathing room in by making the boss get knocked back every time it gets broken, as opposed to if you give it no turns at the beginning, the boss's turns are framed, and you can't give yourself that extra space. And with a no ingot team like this, you're going to need it because you won't do enough damage in order to prevent, even with the summon, you don't do enough damage in order to kill it before you run out of Aphmau Reigns combos, which we are going to do, by the way. Aphmau is going to run out of her LD well before Sid Reigns runs out of his LD. I mean, you can see we're having a lot of success here. We're hitting these big numbers. Not as big as it would be if we had more blue armors, but we're hitting these big numbers even at below 29% threshold. And so, yeah, I think that might be the last LD, if it hasn't already happened. No, that must be the last LD for Aphmau right there. And, yeah, I'm just double checking my buffs. Don't want to lose Cavalry Commander, or I2 will challenge my fate. So there's another I2 will challenge my fate, or whatever. Heavenly Fist. But, I want to make sure I use all of Sid Reigns' LDs as well before I lose Y'shtola. So I use Reigns' LDs also for the damage, not necessarily just to keep the I2 will challenge my fate buff up. Cavalry Rush to bring Aphmau back, and we're just going to keep launching. Yeah, look at those numbers. 700,000 from Sid Reigns, below 29%. Like, Y'shtola's burst effect is just bonkers with these two. And so, I don't know, I'm almost tempted to go back and pull that Y'shtola burst. But I think I'm just gonna, I already have Bartz's burst. And for me to go out of my way to pull a burst like that, it's, I don't know. And I've been doing a lot of these low ingots, no burst, no blue runs. And so I don't need it per se. Yeah, we're going to use our last Heavenly Fist here before we lose Y'shtola. Actually, what's interesting about this run is we're also going to use no summon phase, I guess you'd call it. No summon phase. Because we're not going to need it. Like, I was holding on to the summon in case the boss's turns came close enough to where it was going to get a turn. But we're just, it's not going to get there, spoiler alert. But again, Sid Reigns is synergy for this, so do keep that in mind. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Reigns over the next few battles where he's no longer synergy. With the Reigns Aphmau combo, if it's still this powerful. We'll see. I imagine there will be some green Barts on my friends list. Although, Bartz doesn't provide the blue armor benefits for the party like Y'shtola does. So maybe Y'shtola will still be a better friend than green Bartz? We'll see. I do have a Bartz burst. I'm undecided what I'm going to do with it. I am excited for Ace. I want to run Ace in Setzer. Ace has a lot of Brave hits in his kit, and I imagine Ace Setzer will be pretty good. Especially because Ace has a lot of Brave hits off turn. just like core. Although, I don't know if I'll be able to run Ace Setzer core without, and still be able to manage the orb, but we'll see. Looking forward to Ace. Somebody, I think it was Clay, already ran Aphmau Rain's Bart's and no-turned the boss. But, you know, he had blue armor and ingots and stuff, so works just fine too. Anyways, there's that. Feel free to comment if you have comments or questions. If you like the video, like it. It'll make me feel better about myself. And subscribe if you want to see more. And then here we have, you can see Rain's 0 ingots, Ignis with 0, and Aphmau with 0. Thank you for